Today's episode is sponsored by Audible.com. Audible is a seller and producer of spoken audio entertainment, information, and educational programming on the internet. Audible sells digital audiobooks, radio and TV programs, and audio versions of magazines and newspapers. To start using Audible today, please visit their website at www.audible.com. That's www.audible.com. Welcome to another episode of Taking You to the Top. In this podcast, Rami spends time speaking with founders and CEOs from across the globe and asks them specific questions to learn exactly how they launched their businesses. Before we get started with today's guest, please follow Rami's Instagram account and subscribe to his YouTube channel so you don't miss any upcoming episodes. If you'd like to watch previous episodes, simply click on Rami's IGTV section or visit the YouTube channel to watch those episodes. If you'd like to get more information and analytics about each guest, simply click on the website link in Rami's bio. Now, let me spend a moment to introduce today's guest before Rami gets started. Today's guest is the founder and CEO of the Accreditation Council for Medical Affairs, also known as the ACMA. The ACMA provides data and tech solutions for medical affairs and the MSL space in the life sciences industry. ACMA has a predictive analytics tool, as well as ACMA Engage, a medical affairs-specific CRM platform. Join Rami in welcoming him to the show. If you have any questions for our guest today, please leave them in the comment section below. That being said, we hope you enjoy today's episode. Without further ado, are you ready to take it to the top?
So William, thank you so much for joining me today. This is episode number 9 of Taking You to the Top.
Thanks for having me, Rami. Pleasure to be here.
So to get us started, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and possibly take us back from the beginning. Tell us where you're from, where you started your journey, and how it led you to becoming the founder and CEO of the ACMA.
Sure. Again, thanks for having me. So as you mentioned, I'm currently the founder, the CEO of the ACMA. I grew up in the northeast part of the United States, in New Jersey, New York area. And I went to school in New York City. So I went to school at New York University and Columbia University, where I got my PhD. And, I grew up in a very entrepreneurial environment. My father kind of had the typical immigrant story, if you will, coming to the U.S. really with nothing in his pocket, and then over the years becoming fairly successful. So there was always that drive to be able to make sure that all that effort that he had put in didn't go to waste. And I think that drive is really there until now, in the sense that you almost feel like you need to be able to give back. And so for me, really where the journey began, which is sometimes where a lot of good journeys begin, was I had met a girl. And the girl that I had met, we dated for a little bit. She's not my current wife, just as a disclaimer, but she worked she worked in the pharmaceutical industry. At the time, I had just graduated with my bachelor's degree. My background in biochemistry, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And so one of the first jobs I had was, people don't know this about me, but I was actually a teacher. I taught chemistry and physics. And about a year in, I met this woman, and she worked in the pharma industry, and basically introduced me to that world. And it opened up an entire new area for me that I hadn't known about. And she said to me, you would be great working in the pharmaceutical industry with your background, your personality. And so that's really how it began. That's kind of what started me to kind of look and investigate opportunities in the pharmaceutical industry. And I think in general, when you think of experiences that you have in your life, and anybody probably can relate to this, you can see that oftentimes all those experiences prepare you for what you're currently doing or where your life is at today. And I would definitely say, whether it was the work that I did as a teacher, whether it was the work that I did in the industry, on the sales side or the medical side, it absolutely prepared me for eventually being able to build and start ACMA. And I think ultimately shaped, I would say, my worldview professionally on what are the skills you need to really be a successful leader.
Sure. So actually talking about the ACMA, could you give us an idea of what you're trying to achieve with the company? What's the main goal?
Absolutely. So our company was the first to ever establish standards in the pharmaceutical industry for medical and scientific professionals. And we did this through a board certification within medical affairs. And for those that don't know, in the pharma industry, medical affairs is the division of the industry that's involved in educating healthcare providers and also generating new data once the drug has been approved, let's say in the United States, by the Food and Drug Administration or the FDA. And so we established a board certification because we believe that you need to have minimum standards of competency for the people that go out and educate doctors. And today we've expanded quite a bit over the last few years. We also offer technology and cloud-based SaaS solutions. Like we have our own CRM platform, ACMA Engage. We also have a predictive analytics AI-driven platform called ACMA Predict. We also work in prior authorization and medication safety name testing. So really, ultimately, the idea is to offer a full suite of solutions to the life sciences industry, focused specifically on medical affairs, medication safety, and field reimbursement.
Okay. And for the more entrepreneurial audience members, when you built the company, did you bootstrap it or did you have to raise capital to start this suite of solutions?
So we actually are completely bootstrapped. And although I had the opportunity to raise capital, and I should say as a side note, you know, I did have a company before this, US Pharmacy Lab, which I had built and sold prior to the ACMA. So I had definitely experience in building something from scratch, you know, kind of scaling it and selling it. But, you know, again, knock on wood, you know, ACMA has been completely bootstrapped. And we haven't had the need necessarily to have to raise capital at this point. Although, again, outside investors have been interested in the work that we're doing. But I'm a big believer in the fact that you want to try and keep, obviously, as much equity as possible if you can. Of course, if there comes a point where, you know, raising capital is important to continue to scale, then that's something that we would consider at that stage.
Fantastic. And what's your current team size?
We're about 25 people worldwide. So we're, I would say a fairly small outfit, you know, in terms of the amount of revenue that we achieve. And, you know, for us, one of the things I'm a big believer in is kind of this concept from Ray Dalio about radical transparency. And I also try to keep a very meritocracy type based system at work. I think these are principles for me that are really important. So I try to keep a fairly flat organization where, you know, people are able to have access and talk with me as much as possible. I like to kind of keep my ears to the ground to always know what's happening as much as possible. I'm also a big believer in the idea of maintaining a culture that really helps people become motivated and thrive to be their best. And I think Peter Drucker said it best when he said culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I absolutely think that's true. You can have the best laid out strategy, but if you don't have the right culture, if you don't have the folks on your side believing in your mission, ultimately, you're not going to be as successful as you'd like to be.
Absolutely. And would you say when you started this company, did you have a preferred, or what was the most effective marketing channel you used to get the word out there? You know, I mean, a lot of entrepreneurs, they start a company, but they struggle to get it to the right people or have the right person hear about it.
That's a great question. I think today, social media is huge. If you're a company and you're looking to really be successful, you can't work without it. So for us, we were really one of the first organizations to actually take this area that we're focused on within medical affairs and go to social media and even mainstream media. So, you know, I'll do a lot of things in the media. Just a few weeks ago, I was featured on television on Al Jazeera, Forbes, ABC News. I've been on Fox Business News. So all these different media outlets. But I think they're important because you want to be able to get the message out there to the public. You want to be able to get your message out to the right people. You need to understand what your audience wants to hear, what they're looking for, and be able to meet those needs. So I think, for us, what's probably been the most effective, I would say, is just kind of grassroots social media, a lot of referrals. I mean, today, think about it. If you're thinking about going to a new restaurant today, what do? You Google it. You look up the reviews, right? If you're looking to get a new book, that's what you do. You look up the reviews. And so referrals today and word of mouth is huge. And I think social media plays a big role there.
All right. But is there any a specific platform, or would you say all social media in general?
For us, LinkedIn in the US has been really big. We have, of course, an individual that manages the Asia business for the company. And for, in Asia, in certain parts of Asia, like China, WeChat is really big, right? They don't necessarily have the same platforms. In other parts of the world, like the Middle East, for example, we found that platforms like Instagram seem to be more popular. So I think, what we found globally is that every platform has a little bit of a different usage depending on the region of the world that you're in. So that's been an interesting learning for me.
Okay. So my audience are mainly made up of young entrepreneurs. They're either just getting started or, they're right there. This next set of questions is more for the ones that don't have an idea yet, or they're looking for a problem to solve. So maybe you can help them out. I'm not sure if you have a problem that needs solving, but would you say over the course of the last few weeks, you had any major present problem? Something that's repetitive?
A good question. Yeah. Well, look, when you run a company, you always have problems,
sure,
right? There's never, a week that goes by where everything's smooth sailing, right? There are always issues that are going to present themselves. I think to be an effective entrepreneur, you've got to be able to be okay with coping with and handling that stress, right? I mean, for us, for example, I would say two of the problems that I would say today, currently are, one, the fact that a lot of the people that we've been interacting with in the pharmaceutical industry who used to go out and meet with physicians, et cetera, they're grounded because of coronavirus, right? So, I mean, just like a lot of other businesses, the pandemic has forced us to change how we do things. And luckily for us, a lot of what we do is virtual and online and, in SaaS-based. So it doesn't have that level of impact as if it would if you were a business that really relied heavily on face-to-face. But that's one. I think the other one is the fact that a lot of the folks in the public, in the lay public, don't understand there's a difference between people that are selling to physicians versus those that are educating on the medical affairs side. And so I think that's a constant challenge. We see ourselves as the advocates of the medical affairs profession in the pharmaceutical industry, so advocating for them. But I would say if you're a young entrepreneur listening, the piece of advice I would give you is if you're going to, start your own company and you're committed to taking it all the way, be prepared for the fact that you will absolutely encounter days and nights where there's going to be an extreme amount of stress, and that's something that you're just going to have to be able to deal with and cope with.
And at the moment, how do you go about solving that? Like, for example, the selling versus educating side. I mean, do you have to make it clear?
Awareness. Yeah, I mean, awareness, education, marketing, data, right? Those are all the things. I think those three things: education, awareness, data. These three things together are very important.
Sure.
The reality is that, as you probably know, not everyone's going to agree with your perspective or your opinion. So I'm as a trained PhD, my perspective is always present objective data, because it's hard to disagree with objective data. So I'm really big on data, but ultimately, if you put information out there that's objective, the truth is, and this might sound a little bit cynical, but the truth is those naysayers, those haters are still going to doubt what you have to say, right? Sure. There's always going to be people that are going to doubt what you're trying to do. There's always going to be people that are going to want to go against what you're trying to accomplish. Because in our case, you could argue that we're kind of disruptors in the industry. We're trying to disrupt in a positive way how things have been done. If you think about the pharmaceutical industry, Rami, it's suffered some negative hits publicly, right? The opioid crisis really put a negative stain on the industry. A lot of the corruption in the industry. Today, I just saw an article in the New York Times about one of the large retail chains in the United States, and a lot of the issues around prescription errors, and that erodes trust among the public, right? If you feel like the pharma companies aren't doing what they should be doing, or the life sciences companies in general maybe aren't operating the way they should be. So from our perspective, setting a standard in the industry, that is important because it works in the interest of public health.
Right, absolutely. Well, are you ready for us to wrap up with the famous five?
Absolutely.
Great. So number one, what's your favorite business book?
So I mentioned Ray Dalio before, but Principles of Life and Success by Ray Dalio, I love. He has a lot of great principles. He's a well-known hedge fund billionaire. Has a lot of great ideas.
I'm well aware of him.
Presents there. Yeah.
Sorry, can you just repeat the name of the book again?
Principles of Life and Success, yeah.
And number two, is there a CEO you're following or studying?
So I like Dave Novak, who's he was the CEO of Yum, a lot of the Yum brand, a lot of those companies that own a lot of the fast food chains, restaurant companies out there. Ray Dalio, I would say as well. And Mark Cuban, I really like from the Shark Tank. I think he has a lot of interesting ideas and pointers around entrepreneurship.
Number three, what's your favorite online tool for growing your business?
I would say Hubstaff and Jira. They've been great. Jira for project management, and Hubstaff is also good for time management, project management. It gives me a good sense of what's happening in the company at a high level.
And number four, if you could tell your 20-year-old self a piece of advice, what would that be?
In the face of failure, persist.
Okay. And number five, how many hours of sleep do you get every night?
So this is a great question. My wife probably would attest to this. I actually wake up every day around 4:30 in the morning. So I'm a very early riser. I like to get started, early in my day, and I probably go to bed around 9 p.m. every day. So I sleep very early. I like to get a head start, especially because I have team members around the world. So I like to try to be in touch and contact with them early. But I'm a believer that old idea of early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. Right? That old phrase.
I haven't heard that before, but I like it.
Yeah, it's a well-known phrase in the U.S. So.
Fantastic. Well, William, again, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you giving us some of your time. And I hope possibly in a year's time, we could have a follow-up call to see where the company has gone, how you scaled. It would be really interesting.
Absolutely. It was a real pleasure to be here. Thank you, Rami.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Today's episode is sponsored by Audible.com. Audible is a seller and producer of spoken audio entertainment, information, and educational programming on the internet. Audible sells digital audiobooks, radio and TV programs, and audio versions of magazines and newspapers. To start using Audible today, please visit their website at www.audible.com. That's www.audible.com.